2 years passed. Sarah's case became one of the many cold cases that haunted the town. The police gave periodic updates, but there were no breakthroughs. Emily and Mark, once deeply in love, were now strangers. Grief had created a rift between them. Emily spent her days obsessing over Sarah's disappearance, while Mark tried to focus on work, unable to handle the weight of the loss. Time seemed to stretch and twist in strange ways after Sarah's disappearance. What had once felt like a busy household, filled with the laughter of a young girl, was now a quiet, hollow place. The absence of Sarah's presence was like an open wound that refused to heal. Emily had tried everything in her power to fill the void, but it was as if the walls themselves mourned with her. There was no longer a distinct boundary between night and day, grief and numbness. Everything bled together. Mark, too, was lost in his own sorrow, but his grief took a different form. He couldn't bear to look at the empty room where Sarah once slept, so he threw himself into work, burying his emotions under the weight of endless meetings, long hours, and the constant hum of his office. But even the busiest day couldn't keep his mind from wandering. He'd find himself absent-mindedly glancing at his phone, expecting to see a missed call or a text from Emily asking if Sarah had called home. But it was never Sarah. Every time his mind returned to her absence, a familiar weight settled on his chest. Emily, on the other hand, couldn't escape the pain. The house, now too big and too quiet, became a reminder of everything she had lost. The walls, once filled with the sounds of a little girl running through the halls, now echoed her own loneliness. She could no longer remember what it was like to feel whole. Every day, she became more and more consumed by the unanswered questions that haunted her. What had happened to Sarah? Why had no one seen anything? Where was her daughter? Emily knew that the life they had once shared was over. She had become someone else, a mother lost in the depths of sorrow, her every thought consumed by her missing daughter. She couldn't let go. She wouldn't let go. She would replay the moments over and over in her head, Sarah's last words before she left for school, the sound of her sneakers on the porch, her bright smile. But those memories were all she had left, and they only made the emptiness worse. Emily was haunted by the image of her daughter's face, frozen in time, and the crushing weight of not knowing where she was. She was stuck in a loop of pain, her mind constantly searching for something, anything, that would bring her daughter back. The emotional distance between Emily and Mark was growing with each passing day. Their conversations became fewer, and when they did speak, it was only about mundane things. The absence of Sarah had driven a wedge between them, one neither of them knew how to bridge. Emily tried to reach out, but Mark's eyes were distant, filled with a sorrow that was just as heavy as hers. It was as if they were both drowning in their grief, and there was no one to throw them a lifeline. Then, one evening, after another long day of fruitless searching, Emily found herself at the kitchen table. The house felt so empty without Sarah's laughter. She absent-mindedly opened her laptop, her hands mechanically typing as her thoughts wandered. She wasn't even sure what she was searching for. Her fingers paused over the keyboard for a moment before she typed Sarah Thompson into the search bar. 1,000 articles, news reports, and social media posts about her missing daughter appeared, all too familiar. Emily had seen them all before. Every single headline, every word, felt like a reminder of her failure. She wasn't making any progress, not really. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment longer before she typed something else, Google Maps. It was an odd thought, almost desperate. Emily had never considered Google Maps before. She wasn't even sure what she expected to find. But there was something about that moment, something in the air that made her feel as though this was the answer, the thread she had been searching for. She had searched the town from every angle. The streets, the parks, the schools. But this felt different. Emily zoomed in on the streets around Sarah's school, scanning the familiar neighborhood. The area had changed since the disappearance, new buildings, new roads, but it was still the same place Emily had lived for years. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something she had missed. Her eyes darted back and forth as she zoomed in closer, focusing on every detail. But the more she looked, the more the feeling of unease settled in her chest. She had looked at this area 1,000 times, walked down these same streets, past these houses, but something was off. The view was different now, distorted somehow. She saw the buildings, the familiar landmarks, but they didn't seem to fit together. The landscape felt altered, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite belong. Her heart raced as she scanned the area. And then she saw it. A house that wasn't there before, a house hidden from view by thick trees and fences. It was tucked away in a quiet corner, almost forgotten. Emily's eyes widened. There was something strange about this house, something she couldn't put her finger on. As she zoomed in closer, her mind began to wander. She stared at the image on the screen, trying to make sense of something, anything. The area around the school looked so different in the aerial view, and yet so familiar. Emily's eyes narrowed as she saw something strange. A house that she hadn't noticed before, a house that wasn't there the last time she had looked. It was tucked in a quiet corner, nearly hidden from view by the overgrown trees and fences. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt off. Her heart began to pound in her chest, an instinct telling her she needed to know more. There was a reason this house caught her attention, a reason she couldn't ignore it. The feeling gnawed at her, a whisper in her mind that wouldn't let go. She clicked the mouse, tracing the streets around the house, trying to make sense of it all. And then she saw something familiar. A landmark, an old diner she used to go to with Sarah on their weekends together. She hadn't thought about it in years, but now, seeing it again, it felt like a lifeline. But how had she never noticed this house before? Her mind raced as she thought about it. Could this house have anything to do with Sarah's disappearance? Could it be where she had been hidden? Emily's thoughts spun wildly as she tried to make sense of the situation. There was no way to know for sure, but the feeling in her gut told her she couldn't ignore it. This had to be important. The decision was made in an instant. Emily couldn't sit here any longer, staring at the screen, hoping for answers to appear. She needed to see it for herself. With her heart pounding, she grabbed her keys and drove to the house. The wind whipped through the trees as she drove, the air heavy with tension. The house loomed ahead, tucked away behind the overgrown trees, just like on the map. It felt eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of her car's engine. When Emily arrived, she parked her car at the end of the street, her hands trembling as she gripped the steering wheel. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, her footsteps slow and deliberate as she approached the house. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and hope, unsure of what she might find. She reached the house and stood across the street for a moment, her breath caught in her throat. She could barely see through the windows, but there was enough light to make out a few objects inside. As she squinted, her eyes fell on something, a shelf filled with framed photographs. She could just make out the outlines of faces, but one of the photographs caught her eye. It looked like Sarah. But how could it be? Emily squinted, her breath hitching as she saw the image clearer. It was Sarah, but older. Much older. Confusion flooded her mind. It couldn't be Sarah, could it? But there was no mistaking the resemblance. The girl in the photo was unmistakably Sarah. The realization hit her like a wave. Her hands shook as she stepped back, her heart hammering in her chest. This couldn't be real. She had to know more. Without thinking, she ran back to her car and drove home, her thoughts scattered, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. The minutes seemed to stretch into eternity. When she arrived, she couldn't wait any longer. She grabbed her phone, calling the police immediately. "We need to check this house," she urged. "I think I found something. I think I found Sarah." The hours dragged on. Emily paced the house, unable to sit still. She could feel the tension building inside her. Every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, the phone rang. "Miss Thompson, we need you to come down here. We've found something." Emily's heart leapt into her throat. She didn't need to be told twice. She rushed to the scene, her body trembling with anticipation. When she arrived at the house, the police led her inside. What they found was even more shocking than Emily could have ever imagined. A hidden room behind a false wall, filled with Sarah's belongings. Clothes, toys, journals, all things Emily recognized. It was as though Sarah had been living here all along, tucked away in the shadows. But the most shocking discovery was the identity of the person who had been hiding Sarah. It was Emily's own brother, John. John, always the quiet one, the loner who had kept to himself over the years. But Emily never suspected him of something so dark, so twisted. She could hardly process what she was hearing. John had orchestrated Sarah's disappearance, taking her and keeping her hidden for all this time. The reasons didn't make sense. Jealousy, resentment, a need for control. But Emily couldn't understand it. How could the brother she once trusted do this to her? How could he keep Sarah hidden for so long, manipulating and controlling her? The police arrested John, and as the details of the case unfolded, it became clear that this was no random act. It was an intricate, calculated scheme. John had taken Sarah as a form of revenge for Emily's success, for the life she had built while he struggled in the background. The betrayal was deeper than Emily could comprehend. But it also set her free. Emily finally had the answers she had been searching for. She could bring Sarah home. The journey of pain, loss, and longing had finally led her to the truth.